Welcome to the Commonwealth Policy Center's Candidate Forum. I'm Richard Nelson, founder and executive director of the Commonwealth Policy Center. Thank you all for joining us. For this edition, we're going to interview House District 19 candidate Kelcey Rock, who is challenging incumbent State Representative Michael Meredith. And Representative Meredith has been invited. He's declined, but if he chooses to join us for a future forum, he is certainly welcome to do that. Kelcey, welcome to the CPC Candidate Forum.
Thank you, Richard. Pleasure being here.
So the purpose of these forums is to let voters know who's on the ballot and then a little something about them. What makes them tick? Why are they running? What would be their priorities if they were elected? And what I'd like to do is to go down a list of some of the hot issues that Republican voters are talking about. Some of these issues really distinguish the candidates and help the voters to know who's better in line with their values. So we're going to start with one of the core issues for Republican voters and the Republican Party for that matter, and that is the issue of the sanctity of human life. Kentucky Right to Life PAC endorsed you over the incumbent earlier this year. And we'll start with this question, Kelcey. When do you believe life begins?
Thank you. Yes, Right to Life endorsed me. I'm very excited about that. My thoughts on when life begins is at conception.
So this last session, there were a couple Republicans who got on board with a bill that would allow for exceptions to Kentucky's pro-life protections. As it is, the only reason or the only exception for abortion is to save the life or to preserve the health of the mother. One legislator in Louisville in particular, State Representative Ken Fleming, introduced a bill that would allow exceptions for rape or incest. And I realize it's it's an emotional issue. It's a heart-wrenching issue, really. But where do you stand on this issue of exceptions?
I'll be straight to the point on that. I am very, very pro-life. I have 2 children. If God blesses me, we'll have more. I love my children. I love all children. I think that life is such a precious God-given commodity, and we just need to cherish it. You're absolutely right. That is a gut-wrenching, extremely emotional issue. When it comes down to it, the exception of the mother's health, and you're in that situation, you hate to say it, but you have to pick a life, and I've never been in that situation. I hope I never am, but I do believe in that one. I mean, it's very hard for a mother to continue on. And I know, I'm going to get a little emotional about it now. It'd be hard for them to make that decision too, but that would be the one exception I would be okay with, even though I'm having emotional issues dealing with it now. As far as the incest and rape issues, I can definitely understand the point of view from everyone involved in that. Fortunately, there's not that many issues or that many circumstances when that is the case. It is terrible, and that puts that mother in a very difficult situation. But I stand with a life is a life, and I've listened to several speakers talk about it, discuss how they were a product of rape or of incest or of both, and they come around and do their speeches, and they're just so happy to be here, or they have a child that was conceived in the same manner, and they're very happy that their child is here. So I definitely understand that is a very touching subject, and I can't even imagine what that mother is going through, but
Thank you, Kelcey. Were you surprised that Kentucky Right to Life endorsed you?
Yes and no. I wasn't surprised because I stand very firm with my beliefs. I've never wavered on that at all. I've always been very, very proudly pro-life. So as far as that was concerned, not. Um, I do know that they tend to support the incumbent, and in this situation, they did not. So I was a little surprised there. I got to talk with them, interview with them when they were talking to me about this. So I'm extremely ecstatic to have that endorsement. That is one of my favorite ones, honestly.
Very good. School choice. Let's move on to the next issue. This is a hot issue across Kentucky. The state legislature passed House Bill 2, which will be on the ballot this fall in November. And it simply allows for the opportunity to have school choice to come into the Commonwealth. Where do you stand on school choice?
I'm very firm on this one too. I believe it's a parent and a student's right, their choice of what kind of education they receive. Uh, in that case, I gladly support this potential thing. And I know in this situation, even though I've always been very school choice, and you and I have talked about it before, I am for the parents. I support parents and the students in whatever kind of academic upbringing they deserve, and they deserve for their tax dollars to go toward the education that they want. And I want to point out in this case, even though it did pass and it is going for in November, my opponent in this case actually voted no on school choice. Um,
Your opponent also was endorsed, or actually, there's a political action committee that's funded by a group called Better Schools Kentucky. That's the Jefferson County Teachers Union, and they're running ads in that race. Does this mean that so I'm going to twist this and ask this question a little differently. Does this mean that you're opposed to public schools, Kelcey? Because that's the argument that if you're for school choice, that it's going to end up hurting public schools.
And I've heard that time and time again. I've met with several school board members, superintendents, etc., talking about that. In no way am I opposed to public schools. Public schools. Um, I'm a product of public school. Proudly graduated from the only school in my county. Went on to college. Very happy with the education I received. We are now in a world where some of the schools and some of the people aren't necessarily supporting certain values. There are certain things that aren't affiliated with education that are creeping into the school systems. We constantly hear about other issues with budgets, etc. I am in no means against public schools. I simply want the parents to have a choice, an opportunity, whether they want to choose schools or public schools, private schools, charter schools, etc. I think it's the parent and the student's right to choose where they want their education to come from.
Moving on to the next issue, another important issue to Republican voters is Second Amendment. Now, I'm going to put this in the context of the 1-year anniversary of the mass shooting at the Fifth Third Bank in Louisville, where 5 people were murdered. That anniversary was 1 month ago today. 1 month ago, April the 10th. 1 month and 1 year, let me clarify. Now, in response, Kelcey, the CAR Act was introduced this last legislative session. The CAR stands for Crisis Aversion and Rights Retention, which allows for the temporary transfer of firearms away from people on the brink of crisis. Where do you stand on the CAR Act? Is this something you've given any thought to?
Let's start with calling a duck a duck. The CAR Act is a red flag law, and they can dress it up any way they want to. However, it is a red flag law. It is an opportunity for law enforcement, others, to confiscate weapons without any kind of trial, without any kind of jury of your peers, which is just, in my opinion, completely unconstitutional. Now, I'm in finance. I've been in finance for 21 years. So the mass shooting at the Old National Building, I mean that hit close to home. My prayers were with those people for many months and still are. Just something that happens. Mass shootings are tragic and terrible. Now, I don't remember on that particular issue, but I know in a lot of cases things like the Car Act or red flag laws would not have stopped the 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 suspect, the shooter, from getting his or her weapon, prior to the tragedy.
Sure. So, what is the solution to mass shootings?
I think it all comes down to mental health. I've been a supporter of that. I think, and this comes with the opioid issue that Kentucky has as well. I think we are on a verge of a major mental health issue in the Commonwealth. Um, I think we need better access to basically mental health treatment. I think that is where the answer lies with mass shootings. I think that's where the answer lies with a lot of the violence, other crime activities that we have. All comes back to mental health and treating the disease for what it is, to allow people to get back to their normal and productive lives, to prevent this kind of thing from happening. I think it's all in the prevention, not at the moment of shooting, but prior to getting the people mental health treatments when they need it.
Kelcey, some Republican candidates running for the legislature have suggested to get rid of gun-free zones, whether gun-free school zones. I think banks are gun-free areas. What would be your recommendation, at least for public areas, where the legislature could weigh in on? Would you be in favor of a gun-free school zone, for example, or eliminating that? Let me clarify: eliminating the gun-free zones.
Yes, is my thoughts on that. Um, I have always been a person that believed that a good guy with a gun will outweigh a bad guy with a gun. In Kentucky, of course, we're a constitutional carry state now. I'm very happy about that. I'll go out in public, whether you're at the gas station, grocery store, etc., and I'll see. I was actually for Mother's Day, we were out traveling, and I saw a guy open carry in the store. And when I see something like that, I'm actually, I don't know, almost relieved. They say some people get nervous about it, but in my case, I see a normal person, a law-abiding citizen, just like myself, and I see them open carry. I know that person's there. If something happens, they're going to protect innocent life. So I would like to eliminate gun-free zones in the preparation of, or in the context of preparing and protecting innocent life.
Okay. The state of Kentucky is on a path to eliminate the state income tax if it meets certain benchmarks. That did not happen this year. But where do you stand on the elimination of the income tax first? And then secondly, what are your thoughts about replacing that tax with taxes on the service industries across the state?
I'm glad you brought this one up. I've been recently attacked, actually, on comments I've made about income tax and uh, the House's tax policy. First, let me just say I am against income tax. I would much rather people use their money for good than the way it's being used now, the way it's being spent now. As far as the income tax, yes, you're right. We haven't hit those goals. So they reduced it to 1% the first year. And then we didn't hit budgetary goals for expenses, so that it's not been released. But looking at it in the broader spectrum, it was designed that income tax will decrease as revenues increase. Revenues being, for the state, the only revenue they have is through taxation. So the goal is their goal was to eliminate income tax through taxes on through other channels. Most notably is the service industry received a whole lot of basically sales tax equivalent that they have to do, that they were admitted from before. And it looks like with the newest budget that came out, we may be shy of hitting our goal the next 2 years for income tax reduction. Meanwhile, everyone in Kentucky is still suffering from the increase in the sales tax for services and other things that were previously emitted from that.
Right. And if I could add services like car repair, which hits everybody, the poor as well as those who have larger incomes. Would you be in favor of repealing some of those tax, or is that something you would push back against or repeal?
I wouldn't be opposed to it. I would like to see the bigger picture, and I would like to come out and talk to people about that to show them the overall. All right, here's what's really happening. It's canceling this, but we're adding it on this side, etc. I feel like it may not have been unveiled the most honest way. I think that it not misleading, but it was confusing the way it was done and the way that we're removing income tax when in reality sales tax and other things because of the service industry has picked up. Um, and on that with the adding it to services, like you just said, the car repair, for instance, that not only you said it hits the wealthy and the poor is the same. Not only that, like it's an attack on some small businesses that for the past 20 years or so have operated. They have charged their fees based on not having taxes on that particular thing. Now that business still has to pay their income tax just like anyone else, but they weren't collecting taxes before. So now they've had to go up on their charges. That's hit the consumer. That's hit the small business. This tax reduction has increased taxes to everyone.
Very good. This last session, again, a bill addressing medical rights of conscience was introduced and actually passed the Senate, Senate Bill 239, and it provided conscience protections for medical professionals who object to procedures that would violate their conscience, like abortion, gender transition surgeries, things of that nature. Did not get a hearing in the state house. Is that something, if you were in the legislature, that you would have voted for?
My beliefs on that, I believe that our rights are God given, and it's up to ourselves, with the help of the government, to protect those rights. In this case, they're asking medical professionals to violate their morals, their religious beliefs, in order to perform surgeries, actions that they morally, ethically disagree with. And I don't think that's right. I don't think you should ever ask someone to go against their religion, their beliefs, their values, to do something they don't believe in, with the exception of maybe saving a life.
Kentucky is at a crossroads. We can choose to give in to the radical left, or we can choose to engage the culture in a God-honoring way.
I started the Commonwealth Policy Center because I believe that Christians have a responsibility to influence government and society to the glory of God. While the Commonwealth Policy Center's made a significant impact, our work isn't finished. If you'd like to join our movement working for timeless values, then head to our website.
To learn more, go to CommonwealthPolicyCenter.org.
DEI, moving on to the next issue, stands for Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion. There were two bills introduced to restrict pushback against this at our colleges and universities. One bill that would have addressed it at K through 12. So critics say that this elevates some races and ethnicities above others, and that it targets conservative speech and discriminates against conservatives in the hiring process, and essentially creates an uneven playing field in our schools. Where do you stand on DEI initiatives?
DEI, CRT, SEL, it goes by various acronyms. The bottom line of it, they all are promoting that races are different and that some are better or worse based solely on race. And that's not something I believe in. I think those kind of behavior, or those kind of educational policies, hiring policies, procedures, actions should be removed. We fought for a long time for civil rights, equal rights across all races. And this seems like we're going backwards. We're now going back to discriminating solely on the color of one's skin. And that's and not just with education, with DEI in schools, but with taxpayer-funded DEI programs for K through 12, post-secondary or secondary education universities, with their hiring. Excuse me, I've been sick for a week, so I'm a little hoarse here. With their hiring policies, it's taxpayer-funded civil rights violations, is what I feel.
I agree. And to that point, the U.S. Supreme Court overturned race-based admissions last year in the case Students for Fairness, Fair Admissions v. Harvard. So we'll see if that case can be applied to Kentucky's DEI programs. Moving on, Kelcey, as you know, this race has gotten pretty ugly. There's a lot of mailers going back and forth that are accusing you of things, mailers that are accusing the incumbent Michael Meredith of things. I want to read a headline from the Bowling Green Daily News, and I'd like you to respond. And this is not a gotcha question. This is more of a giving you an opportunity to respond to some of the charges that are out there or accusations. Bowling Green Daily News headline, April the 27th, said House candidate Rock, subject of child support inquiry. And in that article, they're saying that you fell behind on one of your child support payments. And actually, there is a date for you to appear in court. I think it's on Election Day, if I'm not mistaken. Tell us more about that. There's two sides to every story. Is this an accurate headline, or is this an accurate accusation from those who brought it up?
It is. It was accurate at the time. I will say my wife and I, my first wife and I, separated 7 years ago, and from that time on, I've paid child support. I've set it up to where it came out of my check. I've changed jobs over the years a couple different times, and I always call and go through the process of getting it set up to come back out. Not making it a very big deal. In the process, usually 1-2 week period is missed. I will say that the dollar amount that they pushed against me, saying I was behind, was $832.50. That is not even a full month of child support. That is roughly half my monthly obligation. So that's basically 1-2 week period. Now, since then, it was resolved. It was fixed. What I think was a little interesting about that is they came after someone who's paid, like a clock for 7+ years, who got behind, not even real, I guess technically it was behind by $800, less than 1 month payment, half a month payment, one paycheck, and then went forward to press charges and to make my court appearance on the day of the primary. Now, like I said, that's been completely paid. It was paid almost before it was ever even an issue. Of course, attorneys are working to sort it out, but I think that's an interesting thing to say, to look at the bigger picture of all the players involved in this. I've changed jobs several times over the years. This has never happened, even though, the payment stopped and then picked back up just like before. There are county attorneys and people that work as assistant county attorneys in that office, and I believe that this was almost intentional to try to embarrass me, especially with the court date being on the day of the primary. And this is from falling behind in, I believe, February is when this is dated back to, and was cured in March.
Very good. So some of the other accusations that are being lobbed, and again, I wish that we didn't have to talk about this. I wish that campaigns could focus on the merits of the candidates and the issues. But there's another accusation that I believe there's a mailer going out saying that you were the subject of a domestic violence order. Can you address that? Yes.
As I mentioned just before, my first wife and I went through a divorce in, I believe it was 2018. And of course, not all divorces are pretty. The the end result, both of us have moved on. We're both co-parenting our child together. She's remarried. I'm remarried. We're all getting along just fine now. There was an EPO that was issued against me. And if you pull up the specific EPO, the charges were that I don't want to use the word messing. I was messing with the alarm system. I had left our home. I was living elsewhere, and I was accused of messing with the alarm system. Of course, it was a smart home, so we both had access on our phones. She simply unplugged the alarm, which was fine. I didn't need to have access to it. But that was the charge. That was at the request of her attorney to file something in an attempt to take away my ability to visit my son. But the extent of the EPO was I was using my phone to mess with an alarm system from our home that we owned together. That was also very much dismissed in court and almost laughed at when that happened.
The other charge, I think, on that same mailer, it might be a separate mailer, but was regarding DUI. Do you want to address that? Was that accurate?
Well, there's a reason there's not a source cited there. I'll tell you that one. That looks like a picture of me. Of course, I had a costume in college. I went to a few Halloween parties dressed as a convict, and that looks an awful lot like one of those pictures that are readily accessible on Facebook.
So there's no merit to that story.
Not really.
Kelcey, I appreciate you responding to that. I know those are tough issues. Anytime you put your name on a ballot, your life becomes an open book, and it's you're putting yourself out there. And sometimes the charges are inaccurate, as you've had a chance to respond to. What issues are you hearing from the voters out there as you knock on doors and go to events? What's on the top of their minds?
A lot of it is social issues. I've run into so many people that are angry about DEI, CRT, SEL, insert acronym there. A lot of people also are really sensitive to things that were covered a little bit with Senate Bill 150 last year. They're very sensitive to men and women's sports, men pretending to go into girls' locker rooms, bathrooms. The area I live, the area I believe in and represent is very rural. We're very family oriented, and there are just a lot of things that aren't, family based that are happening of course, in DC and Frankfurt that are trickling down to us here. And rural America just doesn't like that. I mean, we have to protect our children. We have to protect our loved ones, our families. And some of these laws that are coming through, some of these issues being pushed down are not only infringing on our conservative values, but are just a terrible and a abuse of power and trying to change the way wholesome people feel and believe. And as I said earlier in the conversation, you shouldn't have to violate your beliefs, your values in order to accommodate others. And safety. You shouldn't have to sacrifice your own safety or your family's safety. And in a lot of cases with the commingling of bathrooms, that's a hot issue there. But that's been the bulk of what I've run into, door knocking.
We are running out of time here. If you are elected, what would be some of your priority issues? 1, 2, 3 issues that you'd make a priority?
One of the top of my list is with school choice. Of course, we'll know in November with the amendment, if it goes through. Of course, I'm going to be pushing for it and out there, win or lose, canvassing and door knocking for that particular amendment to make sure that goes through. Another hot issue kind of falls with what I just said, with what I've picked up door knocking in this area. I feel like it's a belief that the constituents in this area really have, and that's with some of the DEI and protection issues with men and girls bathrooms, for instance. Even though that's all been passed now, there are some places that aren't enforcing it, that are still allowing activities like that. School systems, cities, parks, etc. We also have a major issue in Warren County, where there's a lot of taxpayer funded. I'm trying to think of the best way to describe this, but it's basically public pornography, with some of the drag shows and kids putting dollar bills and drag queens undergarments, and that's something that needs a little bit more fine tuning. Ultimately, we have to watch out for what kids are exposed to, and we keep seeing lots of issues where people are refusing to accept that we have to protect kids from being exposed to vulgar, pornographic, and just other dangerous situations. It's our right as parents, as citizens, to protect our next generation.
Kelcey Rock, thank you for joining CPC's Candidate Forum. I'll give you a minute for closing statements. Go ahead.
Again, Richard, thank you so much for letting me on your program. I appreciate being here. I appreciate being able to address the community in a much broader way. Just want to say again, I'm Kelcey Rock, running for state representative in District 19. Among the core values you've heard here today, my primary goal is protecting my kids and our kids. If I've said it in a lot of speeches, people ask, why are you doing this? Why would you want to do this? And Richard, you pointed out here, with all the negativity and ugliness coming out of Frankfort, why am I putting myself and my family through this? And we've talked about it and we've prayed about it. At the end of the day, it's my two boys. I want the world that they grow up in to be better. I want them to be safe. I want their friends to be safe. I want our kids to not be exposed to vulgar, pornographic material, exposed to things that they shouldn't have to be exposed to. They're children. Let them be children. Let them enjoy themselves. Let them grow up to be good Kentuckians, good Americans. So when asked why I'm doing this, I'm doing it to protect our next generation, to protect our kids, my kids, your kids, all of our kids. We're all in it together. We have to keep the next generation safe.
Okay, very good. Kelcey Rock, thank you so much for joining us in this forum. And thank you all for tuning in. Don't forget, Election Day is May the 21st, and early voting is on May the 16th. Projected voter turnout, by the way, is supposed to be around 15%, according to the State Secretary of State. So make sure you get out and vote this election.